On our Tulalip Reservation, we are grateful for the bounties that Mother Earth has provided us. Our relatives have held great respect for this land and the waters here. They fished, hunted, and gathered plants, only taking what was needed. The relationship we share with the sea and land is sacred. We honor the first salmon as we honor the mighty forests. Trees, especially cedar trees, hold great respect among us. Cedars provided much of what our relatives needed. From canoes and totem poles, to longhouses and clothing and finely woven baskets, cedar played an important role. Exhibits at the Hibulb Cultural Center showcase cedar. Today, more and more Tulalips are reviving the art of working with cedar. Judy Gobin has been weaving cedar for nearly 25 years. She is among tribal members who go to the mountains to gather cedar. Judy's love of cedar weaving is shared with her family. Her intricately woven dolls have earned awards at prestigious exhibitions, and her graduation caps have honored high school graduates. Join us today as we sit down with Master Weaver Judy Gobin. Thank you for joining us. We have Judy Gobin here with us today. And Judy, we are so excited that you're here so we can learn more about cedar weaving. So can you tell us more about what inspired you to learn about cedar weaving?
I've been inspired since I was a young woman, and the interest in doing cedar weaving came about when an elder of ours, an aunt of mine, Elsie Price, held a class when she was quite elderly here at the tribe. And she ended up getting sick, and we had to discontinue the class, and it never started back up until 1992. And so it was early on in my teenage years when I became interested in learning.
So how many years have you?
I've been weaving since 1992 when they had a rediscovery class here at the Cultural Center before it became a cultural center. And I always say thank God for gaming, because it was gaming revenue here at our tribe that allowed our tribe to spend money on putting together a rediscovery program that retaught us our traditional ways, carving and weaving and language and singing and dance. So that's where I started.
So that is the role that the tribe has had in the revitalization of weaving, is through the casino revenue?
Right. It's sad that, during that time we didn't have money that could go towards cultural. It went towards the upkeep of our tribe. When we started getting extra money, it went towards the cultural and created what was called the rediscovery program. And thank God for that, because they brought in Master Weaver Anna Jefferson, who was my teacher out of Lummi, that came and through the Northwest Indian College and taught at all the tribes in the Pacific Northwest traditional knowledge.
So let's talk about the importance of cedar to our people, to our culture. Can you discuss that for us?
Well, I think...
How was cedar used?
I think cedar was the center of the Pacific Northwest Coast Salish people. We used it for everything. We used it to travel with. We used it for clothing. You can see that it was used for clothing. It was used for cooking. They steamed in boxes food over the fire. So it was the life of our people. It still is the life of our people.
So can we start discussing how it's gathered, when and where?
Well, my teacher taught me that when the flowers naturally bloom in the spring, which is around March through March, it starts blooming. I always think of the Easter lilies that grow in the wild. Mm-hmm. And when they bloom, then you can start looking for trees to pull and test to see if they're ready. And so we go out and start testing, and if it comes off easy, it's ready. But if you go to pull it and it breaks off, it's not ready. It's not, the sap's not running. And so you only have this little window in the spring and into a little bit of the summer till July when you can gather that cedar. And so Anna took us up and taught us that in our first summer when we was her students. And since that time, I've always gathered. Me and my family go up during that time when it's ready. With the group of tribal members, we all go up for the day and gather, and my grandkids bring in the cedar to a landing where I'm sitting, and I clean it and get it ready. So we do it as a family.
And where do you go to gather cedar? In the mountains?
The tribe sets up times and places for us to gather our cedar, and usually it's neighbors of ours that work with our forestry people that make their land available when they're going to clear timber and let us know, we're going to clear, your people can come in and gather. But if nobody does that, I can go to the Forest Service and apply for a permit before entering, like the Mount Baker Forest, the Snoqualmie Forest. And I could apply, and each one of the people that are with me on the trip can take 10 bundles off from a tree. And when I gather like that, the tree's standing when you pull it off in the tree, and you can only take a third of that tree in order for it to keep on living. So when you take that third and you're thankful for being able to take that, after you're gone, and you can see in the woods today, some of those trees grow over and heal that tree that you took cedar from. So it never harms that tree, doesn't hurt it in any way. It only hurts it if you take more than that third. So when the tribe takes us up to gather, those people are going to tear those trees down. They're going to cut them down. So we get to take the whole tree. We get to take all the cedar off. So it's, you can get 10 strips off in one tree. And so in a good gathering day, my family can gather about 50 bundles, which is a lot of work.
Yeah.
I've seen very old growth cedars with marks in them, where you can tell that is a spot where cedar was stripped and healed. So it covers itself back up over several years, I think.
And do you bring your daughters or anyone from your family? Do they go with you?
Yes, all my grandkids go, my grandsons, because my husband and I are elderly. My grandsons all know how to get out there and strip the tree. My husband taught them. And they go out, all the grandkids, I have a lot of young men, they go out and they pull those strips. They can be 30 feet long that they're pulling back up to the landing so that we can strip them. Wow. So all of the family goes and we make it a whole day.
Is there anything you want to mention about the teachings when it comes to cedar gathering?
Well, we always are told, and my teacher always taught us, that when you arrive in the woods, you say a prayer to the Creator for allowing you this time to go out and gather the cedar, and you're thankful for it, for being out in the woods. And after I learned how to weave, I think I had a much better understanding of trees. When I drive down the road and I'd see cedar trees, I looked at them differently, because I thought, wow, these things right here, these little dolls, came from a tree that was standing up. It was an actual tree, and look at him. He's made into something beautiful. You see those canoes that sit out in our museum, and you think that was a tree standing at one time. And so after you've worked with it and you pull it, you're part of that tree. When you're working with it, it's such a healing journey to do this kind of work, because it comes from, that's what people think is, man, I'm so amazed that you can make something like that from a tree, that it's bendable like that. So.
Well, thank you for sharing. This is all very interesting. We'll go ahead and take a break, and please join us for more information about cedar weaving. We're here with Judy Gobin discussing her beautiful work she does, and we're going to talk about what she creates, from everything from cedar dolls to hats to belts. Can you please share more about what you make?
We've made so many items from cedar bark and tried to incorporate traditional pieces along with contemporary pieces. So we do a lot of jewelry, bracelets, we've done a lot of rattles, hats, of course, headbands. In most recent time, I created a graduation hat for our graduates, and so I get a lot of orders around graduation time for that type of thing.
How many hats did you make last summer? I saw the newspaper article. Wow.
110, and that was a project I did with my daughter, Tony Jo, so her and I both did it together. And I think we started in February for a May banquet. And it was day and night. You know, like one whole month it took us to cut the cedar for that job. So we make a lot of items from cedar.
And let's talk about the beautiful dolls we see here on the table. And how did you learn the craft of doll making?
Well, during the class that we had here at the Cultural Center, Stephanie Blatchford, who was an elder at the time, was brought in. She was the one that knew how to make dolls, the only person in Tulalip that knew how to make them. And when we started class with her, it was a very enriching time because she had so many great stories about how these came about. And I have to share with you, she was a young girl, and Agnes James, her grandmother, was a weaver. And it was Christmas time, and they were in the stores, and there was a doll on the shelf with porcelain hands and a porcelain face, creamy white, and, you know, a beautiful dress on. And she told her grandmother, "I want a doll like that for Christmas." And she said, "Okay," you know, and she told her she'd get it, you know. Well, it got close to Christmas, and her grandmother sat up all night the night before Christmas and created a doll like this. And in the morning, she had it in a little bag, and she gave it to her.
Oh, wow.
And she goes, and it was my most treasured item. And over the years, she remade those dolls after she'd wear one out, because she actually played with it like a toy. And it would wear out, of course, and she'd make her a new one. And that's how these dolls came about, was out of her wish for a doll on the shelf. Her grandmother made her one out of cedar.
Oh, wow. Because every little girl wants a doll for
Yep,
Christmas.
Yep.
Do you have family who've handed down their skills? And if so, what stories can you share?
Well, through this program, our teacher, Anna, went from reservation to reservation and held classes in Swinomish, in Port Gamble, in Squaxin Island, in all over. And when we was learning, me and my daughter Heather, we always wanted to have more than one class a week, right? So we'd ask her, "Where are you going to be this week? We'd like to come if it's not too far." Well, she was in Swinomish. And this is where my grandmother comes from, Mary Sampson from Swinomish. And so we went up to the class, and it was at the senior center, and there was a few elders in there, one of them being my great aunt was sitting in there. And she's weaving a beautiful basket. And I didn't know all growing up that all my aunties, my great aunties, were weavers. Well, come to find out, my grandma Mary was a master weaver, and she showed me that night a picture of my grandma Mary with 3 large baskets, one up to her knee and the 2 smaller baskets, and they were all matching. And the picture was of her with a man from the Smithsonian who had come to buy those, or to borrow those from the tribe to take them back and put them on display. And we have never found where those baskets are to repatriate them back. Something we'd love to do. Of course, Swinomish would be the one that wanted them, but what I learned was that we come from a line of weavers. Our aunties, our grandmas were weavers. And so that's where it came, the love for it came natural.
Going back to the dolls, what do these dolls represent? Do they represent anybody in particular?
Well, they don't start out like that. You begin weaving from the top of the head and you go down. And as they begin to form, they become people that you know. Each one of these dolls are somebody that I know in my life. I traveled many years on tribal journeys where our culture was brought back to us in a great way through the canoes, through Cedar, and through song and dance. And so each one of the dolls that we created in this potlatch collection were somebody from that time, from that place where we was at. So each one of them is people I know.
Wow, this is all so fascinating. We're learning so much. We're going to take a quick break and come right back. Welcome back to Hibulb Conversations. Thanks again, Judy, for joining us. And we are now joined by her daughter, Heather Gobin, who has participated in the creation of these dolls. So Heather, can you give a little background information about yourself and how you became a weaver?
When I was 19, my mom asked me to go to a cultural rediscovery program that our tribe offered. And part of that was learning how to weave. And she had pressed me on it and it finally dragged me to class. And I went to class and I loved it. And we started learning together back 20 years ago. So 20 plus years ago. I was pregnant with my first daughter at the time, and she's 20. So we've been weaving together ever since.
And it's clear you're both master weavers. Have you guys ever exhibited your work anywhere in the past?
We've done a lot of local work for our tribe. We've done work for Tulalip tribe, Tribal Health. We did an exhibit on Lopez Island. We brought these dolls to Santa Fe Indian Market. We do a lot of work for community commissions, mainly. We've had interest from museums in Seattle, but we've never really gone that far out of our community yet. We're mainly just community based and based on things that are going around in the community, buildings that go up or new constructions. We get asked to do things for.
And how do people typically react when they first see your work?
Oh, they're amazed. When we were in Santa Fe, they thought this one was corn. They thought it was corn on the cob, or kind of thing, and we had to explain to them that it was woven from the top of the head to the bottom of the feet in one solid piece. So we had to explain a lot about what cedar bark is and the different kinds that we work with, and not just cedar bark, but sweetgrass and beargrass and our different materials that we work with and how we dye them and things like that.
And part of SWAIA's rules, Santa Fe Indian Market rules, is that all of the materials have to be indigenous materials. So they have to be natural. And if there's anything that's not natural on the dolls, it has to be identified on paper, like the beads that are manufactured. And so every bit of the dolls were made by us. The capes were made by us. The wool woven cape that's on this doll right here. We took a class and learned how to gather indigenous plants so that we could dye them with plants that come from our people that grow in our areas. So they're natural in color. They're beautiful colors that they come in, but so everything was handmade.
Wow. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of detail and work that went into those dolls. And I see so much pride in your work, and your eyes light up when you talk about them. Can you tell us more about your pride in your dolls?
Well, I just feel like it's my life work. You know, it's what I want to do forever. You know, it's a great, like I told you, it's a great healing for me to sit around the table with my daughters, with my husband, teaching my grandkids, teaching my friends that come in my house, and just the great feeling you get when you complete a project, when you can give it to somebody and it comes from your heart. It's not something I can go buy in the store. And there isn't anything on this table that I can go up to the store and purchase. It's all gathered from the forest.
Is there anything you would like to add, Heather?
I think for me, it's really neat in hindsight to look at where we started, that it was through a rediscovery program, that we had to learn from a Lummi teacher because we didn't have any teachers here at the time. And the one who taught us how to do the dolls was Stephanie Blatchford, who's no longer with us. I love her to death, but she was the only one who knew how to do the dolls. And so for us to learn that part of our culture and keep doing it and then bring them to Santa Fe and have them recognized, I think a important part, a story that we have when we were down there was when we won and the press came in on Saturday. There was a curator from the herd that came through, and she was thanking us for bringing our art back down to the to the Southwest, because she said she hadn't seen these dolls in 50 years back down there. And me and my mom looked at each other like, wow, that's a big deal. And we didn't, of course we knew nobody knew what they were. And a lot of people didn't even know what cedar bark was in this form. But it was really neat to hear her say that, because she was thanking us for bringing the art back. And that's what I feel like is a big, important part of it. Because when we started, there was only a handful of us. And now there's weavers all over. And it's neat to see it revived back in our communities.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And can you tell us about the heart of the cedar?
I think the heart of the cedar comes from right here, our hands, and what we give with that, how we create things. And like I said, these come to life all on their own. You know, we never started them out thinking that this is what they was going to be, but because of how you make them, they become someone you know. And so there's so much more to it than just making a gift or making an item for sale.
I think it has to do with a lot too with how much it provided for us back in our history, how much the cedar tree provided for us with traveling, with our dwelling places, not just art, but every single thing. The cedar was the center of it, and it's pretty amazing what can be done with the cedar tree.
Mm-hmm. Judy and Heather, thank you so much for being here today, being our guests on our show. And it's so obvious you guys have spent so much time and dedicated your life to cedar weaving and the dolls. I've learned so much from you sharing your stories today, so thank you again for being here.
And thank you for watching Hibulb Conversations. I'm Tessa Campbell. See you next time.